Hello and welcome to Chapter 4. This is our decision making, if then, case statements. But one of the things that I wanted, this is video 1, one of the things I wanted to specifically go into that the lecture did not touch down on enough for my case was both a static variable and an accumulator, which was int count equals int count plus 1. I talked about it. I explained it, but I didn't really give you an opportunity to look at the program working. So in this particular case, we have two variables. We have int static count and int local count. Now the way a static variable works, or the way any variable works is, as long as the object in which it is declared has focus, it maintains a value. So in our case, int local count, it has a value to start with, and it starts off at 0. This right here, int local count equals int local count plus 1, it adds 1 to the local count. But you should be aware, when this object, the static test button, loses focus, it loses all the local variable values and they all reset. So even if it wasn't redeclared, it goes back to 0 every single time. The difference between a static and a local variable, static declaration, int static count is integer. This is a name. I just did it so you can tell the difference between a static count and a local count. But you see right here, the keyword static replaces the keyword dim. Okay, and what that does is the only time that variable can be referenced is in the object it is declared in. So button static test can only access int static count right here, but when it leaves that object, it's going to maintain its value. And what I've done is I've created a small program so you can kind of see the results of that and how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and run it. Let me pull up the code next to it. So the static results are going to go here. The local results are going to go here. Now remember, each time I push this button, it triggers this code, and it adds 1 to the local count, and it adds 1 to the static count. The only difference is, every time this object loses its focus, meaning that I've clicked it and it's done, it runs that code, it then resets the local count variable to 0. However, it does not reset the static count, because a static value maintains its value outside of that object in which it is declared. So for instance, the first time I click it, it's 1 and 1, because they've both been picked 1, everything's fine. Now the next time I click it, it actually puts the local variable results here, it adds 1 to the local count. But since it is a local variable declared locally, it's going to always be 0. Since this is a static variable, it maintains a value after it leaves the object. So every time I click this, this stays 1, so it's reassigning. You don't necessarily see it, but it's reassigning the value, and it's adding 1 to this value. So 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, enter. But each one of these cases, it goes up and up and up because it maintains a value after the object is left. The local does not. That, in essence, that also covers our accumulators. So we have our accumulators, which is int count equals int count plus 1. And it also covers the difference between a local and a static variable, or the use of the static variable. If you have any questions, as always, post them to your discussion board in your resources, or ask your sub, or I should be back in fairly short order. Feel free to ask me as well. I'll be taking a look at the boards and trying to answer questions as I can. Thank you very much for your time. I hope this answers your question. Chapter 4, both on the use of the static variable and the use of the accumulators, which I believe was count equals count plus 1. Interestingly enough, before I finish, you could also do int local count equals int local count plus 2. You can do int local count equals int local count plus 3. So each one of these can go up by various numbers. I only use 1 as an example. You are not tied to just using 1. It can go up by whatever value you want, or even the value of another variable. All right. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great day.